Hello everyone, as you might know, I've built lots of cars in Trailmakers, some of which you can see right now, and in this video I will be sharing my top 5 tips for building amazing supercars and hypercars in Trailmakers that both look good and perform well. And before I begin, I do want to mention that I do build at a quite small scale, and most of my supercars are 8 wide and 3 high in order to scale well with the player. But the tips that I'm going to be sharing today will be useful no matter what scale you build at. So without any further ado, here's my top 5 tips for building supercars and hypercars in Trailmakers. Okay, so tip number 1 is to get your forces right, which this is extremely important for the handling of your car. And basically, if your car tends to spin out or not handle well, this is most likely the reason why. Luckily, unlike in planes, there's only 2 forces that you really need to care about, which is the downforce and the center of mass. Okay, so starting with center of mass, basically, if your center of mass is too far forward, then your car will understeer, and if your center of mass is too far back, it will oversteer. And to quickly explain why, so if you have a lot of weight at the rear and not a lot of weight at the front, so your center of mass is like here, so that will mean that it's easy for your front wheels to start turning your car because the front has relatively little weight. So your car will start turning, but then because your rear has so much weight, your rear wheels will not be able to have enough grip, so they're gonna lose grip, and basically the rear is gonna keep going in the direction you were going previously while your front is now turning, and this will cause your car to lose control and spin out because this is turning but this is still going that way. So the rear just keeps going that way, and yeah, your car basically spins out and loses control. And alternatively, if you have all your weight at the front and not a lot of weight at the rear, it's basically going to do the opposite. Your car will basically just turn very slowly and your front wheels won't have a lot of grip, but comparatively your rear wheels will have more than enough grip for the turning that you're doing. So your car will just very slowly turn little by little, but it won't lose control or anything. Having the weight at the front makes you understeer, and then having the weight at the rear makes you oversteer. And downforce is kind of the opposite. So downforce just kind of adds grip to wherever your center of downforce is, where you'll have the most like added grip. So if you have a lot of downforce at the back, that just means your back wheels will have a lot of grip, so your car won't spin out. And if you have a lot of downforce at the front, your car will turn very easily, but then it's gonna spin out because in comparison, your rear wheels don't have enough grip for the turning that you're doing. Now here's some examples. So in pretty much all cars, I have at least some downforce at the rear. So you can see here on this Countach, for example, I have one spoiler here at the back, and basically the reason this spoiler is working is because the blocks above it, so basically you need space below and above a spoiler for it to work. So you can see the blocks above it don't have any aerodynamics, so it's like there's no blocks above it. So this spoiler functions, and yeah, basically there's one spoiler here at the rear in order to make this car stable. And then an example of a car that's I built to corner faster. So this Diablo that I built, it has downforce both at the front and at the rear, and it has obviously more downforce at the rear than at the front for stability. But you can see also the center of mass is close to the middle, actually a little closer to the front even. And the way that I have downforce at the front is, again, these blocks don't have aerodynamics. Yeah, if I turn on aerodynamics, you see there's no arrows going into this because these blocks don't have aerodynamics. And then here at the rear have 2 spoilers, and again above them is these grill pieces that don't have any aerodynamic. And you can see this car has pretty high speeds and you can corner pretty well, especially for a car that uses, you know, the standard car wheels. And If you want to see more about how downforce works in this game and how to generate downforce, I highly recommend you watch my video on downforce. And here's the forces for some of the other cars. For example, this Ford GT. Again, downforce at the front and the back. The downforce is behind the center of mass. Here's my Bugatti Chiron. So this car is supposed to go super fast. It's not really a car that's that great at cornering, so I didn't bother putting any downforce at the front. I just tried to make it very aerodynamic. And then I have the spoiler at the back to keep it stable while it's going super fast. And speaking of aerodynamics, the next tip will be on how to improve aerodynamics of your car. Okay, so here I am back with the Chiron or Chiron, whatever you want to call it. But this time I am in test zone, and as you can see, this car goes pretty fast. And basically the reason this car goes so fast is because it has good aerodynamics and it has a lot of power. But right now I'm gonna talk about the aerodynamics of this car, and as you can see, it goes over 300 miles per hour on just 15 power cores. So basically the two main blocks that I would recommend you using to improve aerodynamics is shield blocks, which as you can see I have literally like everywhere here, and these grill pieces that I mentioned earlier. So the grill pieces, like I said, they don't have any aerodynamics, so that means air passes through them. So if you want to have a flat area on a car, if you just used an actual flat block, you can see it's terrible. But if you use a grill piece, the air passes through it, and then you can have an aerodynamic piece behind that, so it will just only that piece will get hit. And shields are basically great because they have good aerodynamics and they take up very little space. Here, like behind this, I have a shield to go faster. Here at the front, you can see I have shields basically everywhere. Here at the front, a shield has better aerodynamics than this slope, so I have transparent shields right in front of the slope to improve the aerodynamics and make the car go faster. And another great thing about shields is they don't just take up little space like in the grid, they take up little space visually because they're flat. So if you want like a gap, like for example, if I don't have this shields, this gets hit with aerodynamics, but since I have shields getting running all along this whole part is solid, so there's no aerodynamics here. Same thing with here. If I didn't have the shield, this would be getting hit with aerodynamics, and although this is a very aerodynamic piece, it's just even better to just not have that in the first place. And another spot where I'm doing this is actually below the car on the wheels. So because I have because I have all these shields, if I didn't have them, this wheel would be getting hit by aerodynamics, but because of them, it's all good. So yeah, that's the main piece I recommend you use, is a shield. It will improve the aerodynamics of your car by a lot and will allow it to reach higher top speeds. Okay, and the other thing that will allow your car to go fast is the power source of your car. Okay, so basically the power source of your car is pretty much kind of like a trade-off between speed and realism. So the most like realistic power source obviously is the engine, but if you have a car that only uses actual engines, that car will likely not go very fast, because engines in Trailmakers have very high acceleration. Well, at least the Dragon engine has high acceleration and pretty low top speed. So if you use Dragon engine, you'll end up either not having a high enough top speed, or your acceleration will just be like very unrealistic. So more realistic in like the performance is to use some thrusters, and all thrusters will basically give you a higher top speed. And the thrusters I use most commonly is the space thruster, because it's very powerful and takes up little space, so you don't need a lot of them to make a car go fast. also the tiny thruster, or I guess it's just called thruster here, because this one is very small, and as you can see, you can have it flat at the bottom of your car, which will give you a low center of mass. It can give you a low center of mass, and yeah, that's basically the two main thrusters I mostly use. The dragon thruster, like, good for top speed, but as you can see, it takes up a good amount of space, and when you have it turned on, it has a big blue flame, and it like emits blue light, which is like very visible. And yeah, for the engines, of course, you also have this engine, which is again low top speed, high acceleration, and then this is the only engine that is the opposite, but this engine is just way too huge for any like regular car, and it weighs way too much, so you're just not gonna have this in your car most likely. So yeah, if you look at actual like examples of cars, for example this Pagani Zonda, I use one Dragon engine, and then here you can see a lot of space thrusters, and basically you have pretty good acceleration from that one Dragon engine, and then the space thrusters really give you that high top speed of 200 plus miles per hour, you know. And then the even like more top speed than thrusters is the propeller. Propellers are basically like one of the best glitchless power sources in terms of both top speed and power per power core. And you might have noticed that I used propellers in the Bugatti Chiron to achieve that top speed. You can see I have two propellers here. The one thing about propellers, you can see when they're on, they have like this big circle around them, so I always try to hide them if I'm using them, and that's why I don't use them that often, is because of that kind of circle. Hope that in the future Trailmakers adds like better engines to this game that can actually allow you to have top speed without like insane acceleration, and maybe even add like turbochargers and stuff. It could be very cool. Also, the engine sounds aren't like too great in this game currently. You know, more engines, better engine sounds could be very cool. But yeah, that's kind of my tip, is to use thrusters just to get that more realistic performance with that high top speed without like insane acceleration. Okay, so this next tip is on decals, and just to show you how much impact decals can have on your car, here's one of my cars without decals. So here it is with all of its decals. Looks pretty amazing if I do say so myself. And then no decals. Looks much worse without decals and way less recognizable. And so basically you can see I'm using decals here in a lot of different ways. So one of the ways that's very noticeable is this windshield. So basically I have decals both here at the bottom, like a circle decal to give the front of the windshield a smoother shape, and also a decal on this piece on the side to give the windshield a better angle, and that improves the shape of the windshield by a lot, and I highly suggest you use that in your cars as well. And once again, here you can see without the decals the windshield just looks pretty horrible. Another thing about decals is that if you're like a beginner player, you might not know, is that decals can tile. So here I have a circle decal, and if I turn off tiling, you know, it's just a circle, but it tiles, so it's many circles. And then I use that here for the wheels to have the like design of the wheel. This Pagani Zonda is another car where I use a lot of decals. So you can see once again I'm using decals for the windshield, and here I'm actually using them like with the outline to separate the windshield from this kind of carbon fiber piece. But I think the coolest use of decals on this car is actually here at the rear. So one thing you can do with decals is you can have a decal on a block, and then you can have a glass shield, like a glass material shield above that with another decal on that. So you can layer two decals together, and here I'm using it. I have these tiled circles here, and then I block off the sides to have the quad exhaust of the Pagani Zonda. And then here once again on the sides I have the decal for the tail lights here, and then I use a decal to layer on like the rear like kind of mesh thing on top of that. And yeah, basically I can have a pretty like good looking, pretty accurate rear of a car by like layering decals together. And another one of my favorite uses of decals I've ever done is on this old BMW race car. So I made this car 1 block wide, and to get this grille here at the front, so basically there aren't very many decals that have a reflective look, and there's no like lines that have a reflective look, but instead of making the grille a decal, it's like everything around the grille is a decal, if that makes sense. So all of these pieces are chrome colored to get that like reflective chrome look. And then I have a decal on this shield piece on the top. I have a decal here where it's a tiled like line basically, and there's two of them. And then a white decal here at the bottom to block off the bottom, and that gives this BMW that very nice chrome grille. So yeah, with decals I recommend you do a lot of like experimenting to see what works, and just play around with them, and they can really improve your shaping and the look of your cars in general. Okay, so the final tip of this video is using hinges to hinge parts of your build. So on a lot of my builds you can see that in the builder mode, so this part is straight, and when I exit the builder it hinges down to create that shape. Basically you can have hinges, like here you can see I have these hinges, and you basically what I do is just remove their input and then have a NOR gate that activates them automatically. And basically this means that as soon as you spawn in the build, those parts hinge down, and this can be very useful for shaping of this car. But the reason I put this as the last tip is that this one is kinda like, I suggest to use it pretty sparingly because it is a glitch, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes it can like glitch out your build. So that's why I use it like extremely sparingly. Like I only have parts that really need to be hinged. And this glitch, if done right, it doesn't affect the performance of your car at all. So the performance of the car with these hinged up and hinged down is like the same, because all the aerodynamics are already calculated. And yeah, basically the only parts on this car that hinge is the front and these side parts. And if I show you a different car, for example this Diablo, you can see the only parts here that are hinged are the rear and the front. So it's very easy to like accidentally mess up and do this wrong. And as you can see, all my like hinged parts, so this entire rear part is hinged. And you can see the only place it connects to the car is the hinges, because if it connected anywhere else that would cause problems. Yeah, this part of my car is hinged, and you see it only connects to the car here. If it connected anywhere else, that would cause problems because the game wouldn't know like where to hinge it correctly. If you use like these glitches too much, like your build can end up like working at one point, and then you go on a server and it doesn't work, or the game updates and it doesn't work anymore. But because I use it like very sparingly, I've never had any problems of my builds like stop working. And you can see here on the Pagani Zonda, the front pieces are hinged and these side pieces are hinged, and once again you can see the only place where this piece connects to the car is the hinge. So yeah, and basically the hinges, all they allow you to do is, like I said, have a part of your car slope down, and like if this part of the car is sloped down, I can have this curve here, so it curves this way and slopes down. and that can allow you to build cars more accurately. So yeah, that's basically all the tips for this video, and one bonus tip is just have fun and experiment with different things. You know, just look through the categories, think of different blocks you can use, because sometimes it's like the block you don't really expect to be useful is the one that's useful. For example, you can see here on this Ferrari race car, you can see I did end up using some interesting parts here, like this large paddle as the like rear part of the canopy, and you can see that allows it to have a small like little window kinda, which is pretty cool. And you can see here at the front I used these large tooth pieces for this part to have the curve and everything. So yeah, I just recommend experimenting with different like decorational parts and just parts from different menus that can improve the look of your car. You can see on the Ford GT I used these modular wing pieces to get this curve, so it like gradually curves at the bottom and curves at the top. And then I ended up also using this on the Countach later, so you can see once again the wing piece. So yeah, just have fun, experiment with different parts, and that's basically it for this video. See ya.